Joining us now on BYU Sports Nation is the host of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast and NFL Draft analyst for FanRag Sports and NDT Scouting. He's a busy dude, if you can't tell. His name is Jon Ledyard. Jon, nice to have you on BYU Sports Nation.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You probably noticed your Twitter account blew up when you tweeted about Fred Warner and you wanting him on your team. What did Fred Warner do during what you called an elite Senior Bowl week that you feel has him ready to fly up NFL draft boards?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Me and my fellow NFL draft pundits always joke around. You can always count on when you like a BYU player, you guys are crazy on social media. I mean, you all do everything you can to blow up the refs, and we like writing about him because of that. And it's a good reason. I really liked Jamal Williams last year in the draft, and Warner, I mean, when I first watched him, I'll be honest, I didn't know how to feel. I mean, a great athlete for sure, moves really well, super fluid, has a ton of range, can cover. But, I knew he wasn't going to play on the edge. He's not a line of scrimmage player in the NFL. He's a little light for that role, and I think he can handle a situation, but he really never rushes the passer. And that's the rule that if you're playing on the edge in the NFL, on almost every scheme in the league, you're rushing the passer predominantly. So I didn't see him in that role, so I thought, okay, this is a guy that's definitely going to move back to an inside linebacker role, either a weak side or a Mike probably. Didn't think he would be a Sam, although he kind of played a Sam role for BYU. I didn't think that would be the best fit for him in the NFL. So how does he do reading keys and diagnosing things? And it's a totally different world when you're behind the defensive line. You have to pick up on blocking schemes, and you're keying on your guard. And if he pulls, you've got to chase him through a backside gap and find an alley and sift through trash and sometimes work off of blocks, but more than anything, beat blockers to spots. So it takes a lot of training sometimes. And I was just floored by how Warner picked it up. I watched through the All-22 team periods at the Senior Bowl, and he just seemed to pick up concepts so well and read blocks really well, attack his gaps. He was very decisive, and I worried a little bit about his physicality, but it didn't seem to be an issue at all in Senior Bowl practice. He was very physical. He brought it to blockers, but he beat him to spots more than anything, which I think is really translatable to the NFL. So I just thought he had a great all-around week. I knew what I was getting in coverage and in the open field, but I was really impressed with him around the box.
Jon, did you see enough in the Senior Bowl at inside linebacker, even though he played outside the whole time at BYU, to think that a team is going to take him and put him at inside linebacker in, say, a 3-4 scheme?
Yeah, I think that they could. The schemes, the fronts do vary a little bit depending on the team, but more than anything, it's what you're asked to do in the fronts. A lot of 3-4 teams these days, in fact, most 3-4 teams run predominantly one-gap principles, so it's not quite as confusing a role as you would see in even some colleges, to be honest. They like to get upfield. They like their linebackers to be able to play fast. And, even if it's an odd man front or an even man front, I don't know that it will matter a ton. More so what Warner's asked to do is going to be, I'm sure teams are going to want him as a weak side linebacker because he does have that flow and that athleticism. You don't want to have him have to sort through a lot of trash if he doesn't have to, because you're probably going to have another linebacker that's better suited for that and, not as well suited for what Warner does really well. So I think that you'll see teams use him more in that role rather than care too much about whether he's a 3-4 inside guy or a 4-3 guy. Because nowadays, you're playing nickel 70% of the time anyway. So, it kind of impacts how many linebackers you have on the field a lot of the time.
Jon Ledyard, host of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, with us on BYU Sports Nation. Just how much did Fred Warner help his draft stock?
Yeah, I think that he helped it significantly, and I think he'll help it even more at the combine, which is really the big goal for Warner, I think. A great athlete, you've got to be able to test at a high level. I don't see why he wouldn't. I think that'll just continue to move him up. I'll be lying if I said I heard from a bunch of people. I talked to some folks. I know a lot of people were impressed with his performance. I don't know where it'll determine, in terms of determining his draft range. But, linebackers with his size, 6'3", 235, pretty good tape, a good tackler. As far as I know, I've heard of nothing but great character reports on him. So it seems like if he tests really well, that's kind of the final piece of the puzzle. And we've seen guys a lot more raw than him get drafted really high. So to me, he has the look of a top 50 type player. Linebacker depends on the team. Some teams value it a lot, some don't. It's not like quarterback or corner or defensive end, pass rushers. Those everybody values those spots, offensive tackles. But linebackers a little bit more dependent on certain organizations, value them a lot more than others. So I do think there'll be certain teams that are really interested in Warner. I think he's going to go second round. Even a tad bit higher wouldn't shock me. But I'm speaking without any knowledge hearing anything from anybody else. That's just a guess. But guys with his profile tend to go a lot higher than you think. I mean, think about Hassan Reddick a year ago. He played with his hand down, but he went to the Senior Bowl. He showed out in coverage. He was in an off-ball linebacker role. He shot up boards. His character got rave reviews. He tested really well at the combine. Sounds like a lot of similar things to what Fred Warner did, and for Warner's even probably more experience and more natural in coverage and in space. So I don't see why he couldn't be a quick riser, especially after the combine.
Second round would be tremendous for sure. Is there a team, or are there teams that you think would be a good fit for Fred?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple teams that I know that he talked with some teams when he was down there. I mean, everybody talks with everybody at the Senior Bowl, but there's some teams back end of the first round that would really be looking for somebody maybe like him. I could see New England being one. To be honest, they've got a situation with some of their linebackers where they like to have guys that can cover and can run, and their linebackers, Cal Van Noy's probably the best one, and he's been a little banged up. He's another BYU guy. I could see them making the connection there and him doing a lot of the things that Van Noy does in that defense. And they just need more linebackers who can run. Their linebackers are just too stationary right now. Hightower's been hurt, and they just don't have enough health and enough bodies at the position. So that's one I think that could interest them. The Steelers are definitely another. I'm a Pittsburgh guy, so I feel a little bit doubt into what that team's looking for. They only take ultra athletes. That's all they're interested in. Now there's questions about Ryan Shazier and whether he'll ever play again. And Vince Williams doesn't really fit the profile of their typical linebacker. He was kind of the plug-in guy for a year, but I feel like they think they can upgrade both linebacker spots potentially. They just don't have enough athletes there. I definitely think they'll value that spot in the first round. I don't know whether it'll be Warner or somebody else, but I think that he fits the profile what they're definitely looking for at linebacker. The Saints are another team. The Saints have linebacker concerns. Again, the back end of the first round, and that's probably the one spot on their defense they really need some guys who can move and run, show some range, play some third down roles. They have Manti Te'o and some of those guys, A.J. Klein, some guys like that don't move as well. Aren't really space players. Craig Robertson, and if Alex Anzalone's healthy next year from Florida, and they pair him with somebody like Fred Warner, that's a pretty athletic tandem, a linebacker. All of a sudden, that whole defense kind of rises a little bit. So I think there's a couple teams back there, whether it's in the first and the second, and there's obviously the Raiders, for sure, are a team that needs linebacker help. The Dolphins are for sure a team that needs linebacker help. I could see both of those teams trying to target him at some point in round two.
John, it's been a pleasure, man. We appreciate the insight into Fred Warner and what he did at the Senior Bowl. And I don't need to tell you, if you want more traction on social media, just hashtag BYU, man.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
You got it. Jon Ledyard, host of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast and NFL Draft analyst, with us on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.